All right, looks like just about everybody's here. People can keep filtering in, that's totally fine. So, hi, everybody. Welcome to Yelp. It's really good to have you here. I'm Tim Plummer. I'm a product designer here on the Yelp reservations team. I also edit the blog, and I'm going to be moderating this panel. So, really, it's so nice to have you here. Oh, if you haven't already, you should definitely use our Snapchat filter. It's pretty awesome, designed by our illustrator, Scott Tusk, who should be around here somewhere. And yeah, without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panelists. So here next to me is Lauren Connolly. She's a product designer on the Yelp Biz messaging team, so messaging businesses. Yeah. Next to her is Taron. Taron Ghazaryan is a product designer on the Yelp Reader Experience team, so that's all about making sure your experience browsing Yelp is a really good one. Next to him is Lindsay Goyne. She is a product manager also on the Yelp Reader Experience team. So everybody give her a round welcome. And next to her is Frank Lipari, senior copywriter on Yelp's creative team.
Now it's on. The non-designer.
Ooh, nice.
I'm the non-designer.
Okay, so yeah, we'll just dive right into it. So first, I want you guys to just kind of walk us through your career path so far. How did you end up here?
Hello? Okay. I did it a little backwards. I freelanced for the first 4 years and reached a point where I wanted health insurance. So I applied for a full-time job. I worked at TripAdvisor, very UI focused. I went on to Mozilla, very research focused. And then I was looking for something that married both of those worlds. I wanted the balance. And I really found that at Yelp in product design. And now I'm here. When I started, I worked on the Yelp for Business Owners app. And in the last 9 months, I've started working on messaging. And it's really exciting.
I guess I ended up here by a little bit of luck and a little bit of confusion and a little bit of passion, I guess. It all, I guess, started when I was in 9th or 10th grade, thought Flash websites were cool. So I wanted to make my own Flash websites and did a little bit of ActionScript, did a little of graphic design. Hated the ActionScript part, but liked the graphic design part. So I just kept going at it, and eventually just started landing freelance gigs, just designing websites. And back then, if you designed websites, people expected you to also code them. So kind of had to do that as well. And just over the years, I guess the industry also changed where UI and UX became a focus and product design became a focus. And the App Store became a thing and apps became a thing. So around that time, I kind of started liking what Apple was doing a lot and started designing just apps through like passion projects or side projects. Joined a startup down in LA doing mobile games for a couple of years, and then decided to grow up a bit and do something more serious, something that I use myself a ton, and ended up here.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, the product manager on the panel. So I did not know what product management was when I was in college. So I actually studied bioengineering and kind of fell into product management by accident with an internship through a fellowship I did. When I was looking for internships at biotech startups, they seemed to have me pipetting in a corner. And when I started interviewing at some of the tech startups that my friends were talking about, it just seemed so much more fun, interesting, got to work on things that a ton of people would see immediately just by pushing a little bit of code, and that really excited me. And so I pivoted into more internet tech. So I started working at a smaller startup it was a crowdfunding website not too far away from here. So I was a product manager there for a couple of years. And then after that, I worked at another startup, kind of similarly wanted to work for a bigger company with a bigger product team where I could learn a lot more from my peers, and was really passionate about the consumer space and Yelp, also a product that I use a lot. So was really excited to join the team here about 2 years ago.
So like the rest of my colleagues, it's been a little bit of luck, hard work, as well as accidents. I started as a professional musician, surprise. And after I got really bored of hotel rooms and traveling all the time, I ended up finishing my degree and running marketing at a CAD software firm. But then, of course, music came calling, and I went back to that as a songwriter and producer with Elton John. But when that crashed and burned, and it crashed and burns, I knew that I didn't want to be in marketing, and so I got into advertising. And from there, I worked at a digital ad agency, a part of the Dentsu Aegis network, and built the creative department and the creative offering for that agency for years and years and years. I then kind of left to spread my wings, went freelance. I did freelance way later. Went freelance, did TV, branding, things like that. But Yelp was actually a client of mine, and it was like the best client I ever had. So when the opportunity kind of arose to help, be a part of a great team, great designers, great copywriters, to kind of build this kind of like trendy like internal agency model, I jumped on it. There's so many talented people here. And I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. We're glad you're here too, Frank.
Oh, thanks, Tim.
So community is a huge part of what Yelp does. We see the mission as connecting people with great local businesses. That's what we do. That's our mission, first and foremost. So I wanted to throw you guys a little softball. How do you define community? Go.
That's not a softball.
Community to me is it's the people you're with every day, like at one level, and then it's your neighbors, and it's the 5 Yelp elites that like I know will tell me exactly which restaurant I should go to and what dish I need to try because it's so delicious. It encompasses everything, and I think like sort of jumping off of that, like in this digital age, like we're sort of reinventing what community means, and I'll pass it off there.
Cool. To me, community, at least in the literal sense, was just a shared space where people came together and shared knowledge, shared things like a neighborhood would be the literal term of the community. That has changed in the past 10 to 20 years with internet and apps. You could go on Reddit, which is its own, now it's a gigantic community, but it's still like you could tell who's popular there, who's always mentioned there, and like kind of identified as, like people are identified. So there's a Yelp community, you have like the elites that Lauren mentioned, and the confinement of space no longer exists, and communities are built online now where if you have this unique hobby that you can't find other people doing in your neighborhood, you could now find online and share your experiences, share your thoughts. And that's available to everyone. So you don't actually have to be part of a community. You could tap in and see what those experts are saying and learn a ton of things from people's own experiences. And I think the term community has shifted from local to worldwide.
Yeah, and I almost think sometimes people put more of themselves and more investment into those online communities than they do into their local community, and that's like something that kind of falls by the wayside.
I think that's coming around too with like neighborhood products. I forgot what's the popular one.
Next door, yeah.
Next door, yeah. So I think we went from one end of the spectrum to the other, and now we're kind of meeting halfway.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off those things, I would also say community is around a group of people who have some shared common interests. So whether that's you went to the same college or you're in the same neighborhood, or interest-wise with Reddit or on Yelp, you're a foodie or you care a lot about the best coffee shop in your neighborhood. Finding a group of people where you can explore those ideas together, express things that each other find interesting, and communicate. And so, yeah, with a lot of these new online apps and mobile apps and websites, we've empowered a lot of people from all over the world to interact about things that they share common interests with. And I think Yelp's a unique one with our local business communities, both around local people knowing where the best businesses are, and also around like individual businesses and their customers.
Yeah, you pretty much answered my next question, which is what makes Yelp stand out from the crowd in local. So want to just repeat that exact word? Yeah. No, yeah, I'll expand that to everybody. What makes Yelp stand out in a very saturated market?
Well, I think, well, last time I was on the panel, I was at the very end, and we went down the line, and all the smart answers were taken. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time. But to expand on that, I'm relatively new, I think, compared to everybody else on the panel at Yelp. And one of the things that I found the most interesting is this actual like commitment, like putting money like where your mouth is with community and the community management team. We have people who not just represent the brands, but represent the community and foster that. Everywhere across the United States. And they're not just passionate about Yelp, they're passionate about their local flavor, the local community, what's going on, what issues are relevant, what beyond food, but what food is also relevant. And I think that's what makes Yelp unique.
So piggybacking off of that, the community manager aspect is so cool. I'm a Yelp elite, and like,
whatever.
And
all right.
so I mean, it's awesome. When I moved to Brooklyn, it's huge. There's so many places you can go, and it's this like curated experience. There's people who are also interested in finding these new places. We had an event a couple of months ago. It was called Taste of Fifth. It was in South Park Slope, and this very like Palace of Versailles music hall, like decorative in that kind of gaudy sense, hosted like 100 vendors from restaurants around the area. And I was talking to business owners and taking home rainbow bagels and eating many slices of artichoke pizza. You were having a conversation with your community and the people in it and the people who are part of it. I think that is what makes a big difference with Yelp. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yes, agreed. And with all that said, we know Yelp's awesome. Who else is doing really cool things in the field right now? Who else is making local really interesting?
Just to add on to the last question, I think a lot of other companies are doing cool local things. One thing that Yelp does well is our strict guidelines to reviews and content, to the point where I at least this is my assumption, but a ton of people trust what a Yelp star rating means. So if if a restaurant is 4-star or 5-star, you're going to have a good meal or a good experience there. And that comes down to Yelp's benchmark for what a good review is. I feel like that could be potentially lacking from other people in the local space. But where they make up is, for example, Google does a ton of things with mass amounts of data, and they're able to predict things that just by anonymously watching what everyone's doing. Same with Airbnb, they have the opposite where they're curating a lot of experiences based on one person and what that one person has to offer, and expanding that to their local markets. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the first thing that I thought of was Airbnb Experiences seem pretty cool. That's a new thing that I've been wanting to check out. Dealing with community, taking the online experience, and then being able to actually connect in person with locals and experience a local culture while traveling. I think that's a cool spin on it. Yelp is international, but we haven't ever really tried to build something that's amazing for trip planning. That hasn't really been our focus. We've been much more focused on local experiences and knowing what the locals say and where people that live there say is like the best place to go. So I think that's interesting to take like a local spin on travel. So Airbnb is doing some interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I like kind of seeing where, what Yelp kind of kicked off years and years ago as far as being local has kind of spawned itself into, and I think it's a little bit of a mix of some of the other questions we've talked about with community. And I think that we're seeing a trend towards hyper local, right? With kind of apps like Taron mentioned with Nextdoor, but even Parenthoods, right? So like now you've got a product that solves a consumer problem or a consumer issue or a consumer need down to a hyper-local level where you can see and interact and engage and build a community around parents, for example, like just in your neighborhood. And so I think that we're moving kind of towards like a lot of these niche areas where you have this commonality, whether it be proximity or a commonality of what burritos you like, or the commonality of the fact that both proximity and you have kids, right? Like we're providing solutions creatively, right, in the form of a product that solve those needs. And so it's really cool to see a lot of that happen.
Yeah, and with Airbnb, man, their photos just look so good. I don't know how they do it. So I think this is certainly relevant to what we've just been talking about. How do you guys feel like your individual fields, like how do you feel product design or product management or copywriting and creative direction have changed in the past 5 years or even the past 10 years? How is the landscape shifting?
Cool.
You could take the good answers on this.
I mean, no, I know. It's my turn now. It's my turn. No, I mean, I think that, and it's hyper relevant to Yelp, and I love even how like we've shifted in product design and UI UX, but I mean even advertising and consumer communication, external comms, like we've seen this massive shift into mobile, and this is shit that people have been saying for years and years and years, but it's really hard for brands to actually fucking do it. And so from a copywriting standpoint, it's ideas that live visually and verbally. In a space that's like very small, right? And it's in a context and a format and a platform and an engagement kind of scenario that's very, very different than what traditionally we've been used to. So from ideas standpoint, you have to think about that. You have to consider those things. And even textually, as a copywriter, you have to kind of think about like how to make the most impact or how to make the most kind of engaged message in such a small amount of space, and I think that translates visually and from like a product design and or a design standpoint as well, right? Maximizing a space kind of across a lot of different channels that then kind of lends itself to how we like approach 360 campaigns, how that lives on TV, how it lives on mobile, how it lives on desktop, et cetera, right? I think it's very, very important that we move there.
Yeah. Speaking from, design, when I first started as a designer, design wasn't this valued discipline where you focus solely on that. You, like Taron mentioned earlier, you developed what you designed, you handled all aspects, and then you delivered this nice package to the client. Whereas I feel, I love like where we're at today, where you really, like my focus is creating products for humans and that making sure that the people we're designing for are valued and their needs are being met versus strictly only just thinking about business goals. While that's important, I feel that there's that aspect of it's not just numbers that we're crunching or OKRs we're trying to meet. Like there's a person on the other end that we're designing for. And I think this human-centered approach to design is like really shifting the game, and it's an exciting time to be in.
Adding on to that, I think what is expected of a designer is also changing a ton.
Totally, yeah.
Especially in the past 5 years or 10 years, I would say. When I guess it's been 10 years since the iPhone came out, right? Back then, I don't think we were expected to do as much as we do today, maybe, or we didn't have the tools or capabilities of doing the things we do today.
I think, speaking to something Lauren was saying, actually, you were expected to do more different things, but you weren't as expected to do one thing well.
Right.
Yeah.
So, right. So, what I was trying to get to is like, back then we were expected to, and I'm sure a bunch of designers here would agree with this. Like, we always try to shake that stigma of like we're making things pretty, right? Like, there's someone's idea of something, and then we like mock it up and give it to them. Whereas today, it's the whole picture, like the whole experience. Maybe it's not an interface. Maybe it's when you get that push notification, how do we make sure you're not annoyed when you get that? Or how do we prototype something? Or how do we ensure that the devs who implement this do it in a way where it's consistent and we could replicate that experience everywhere. And to me, that, I guess, the responsibilities of a designer keep changing, and they're, I guess, a lot more focused and specialized, but they're different than they used to be 5 to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
As a product person, I'll talk a little bit about the numbers stuff. But yeah, I completely agree. I mean, as a product manager on a consumer app, if I'm not focusing first on solving people's problems, then my numbers aren't going to be good anyway. So that's definitely my number one priority and the approach I take when thinking about what types of projects we should be focusing on for the quarter. Yeah, we have goals and metrics that our team is trying to move, but our belief is that if we build the product better, if we're able to serve the information on a business page that helps people make a decision, that tells them the things they need to know about whether or not this would be a good business for them, then Yelp is going to be more useful and they're going to come back. And generally that's what my team's trying to do. So it's definitely important to think about humans first. And then based on the original question, which was how is things changing, going with the mobile thing, yeah, that's definitely been a change in my career so far, coming from my previous company where I worked only on a web platform to Yelp, where almost everything I do is mobile now. And there's definitely a lot of product implications in terms of what are users doing? You know, what's their mindset now? They're on their phone. You know, where are they? What are their intentions? They're very different. What their problems are. A lot of things on the go. Things like background location tracking, being able to give them timely pushes that are very useful and helpful. A lot of new developments in technology recently that have changed the way that we think about product. Change the way that we do metrics and prioritize things. So,
yeah, and also just change the way that people live their lives. Like, wake up, like you're waking up to a phone alarm clock, and then you stay on your phone and
wake up to a push notification.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, great insights there, guys. Thank you. Kind of more looking at solutions, what tools or practices make your lives easier? How is technology helping you every day? What procedures do you follow to do your jobs as effectively as you can?
To me, the tools that I value the most are the things that take away busy work. And the example that I like to give is no one, or most people don't like doing red lines. For those of you unfamiliar with red lines, it's like when you're done with a final mock-up, you scribble all over it with values of color, of spacing, of font size, etc. So your developers know how to implement something. A ton of tools have been released in the past few years where they automate that and they're interactive. So your developer can go in there, they could hover over things and know exactly how to implement something. So that's an example. Just things that will take away busy work from the designer and give you time to be creative and give you time to come up with solutions to your problems.
Yeah, I've got something on that. I mean, I agree with Taron. Like the busy work stuff. I mean, as writers, I mean, we have things like Hemingway, etc., that take all the, well, most of the grammar, etc., all of that kind of busy work and like spell checking from us actually writing. But yeah, I mean, like we're looking at all kinds of consolidation as far as like technology into making sure that like we're as efficient as possible. And we've already kind of like talked about Google like a little bit. So like, really being able to see how, documents, et cetera, like kind of come together, I think is really important to make sure that like we're like, unified and we're communicating with each other, because collaboration, I think, is really, really important in how we like create together. But then just outside of that, like not just ad tech, which is a little bit of a dirty word, but outside of that, just like all these like really, really great innovators and technologists who are creating platforms or creating technologies or even building technologies into mobile phones and desktop and VR and AR, et cetera, like basically creating this giant palette for us to be able to say, holy shit, like we can do really, really crazy stuff. And let's figure out how to use everything together to really make sure that we're making great work.
Awesome. I'm going to rewind you a little bit. What is Hemingway?
Oh, Hemingway. It's like this dope app that like spell checks and like grammar checks all your shit.
Nice.
It's tight.
Cool. I know nothing about that. And
it's
now
rad.
I do.
It's rad. Yeah, it's cool. Like you don't even need to be an English. I wasn't an English major. Nah.
Fantastic.
Shit does it for me. It's tight. Or I just go and ask Jim. Jim's back there. Jim will do that.
Hemingway is everybody's Jim, essentially.
I mean, Jim is a reincarnation of Hemingway.
Whoa.
So.
Lindsay, how about from a product management perspective?
So I think I was just trying to think about the tabs that are pinned on my browser. So I got email, still trying to figure out how to keep that under control. Filters, lots of filters. But yeah, in general, Google Docs. I use Google Docs all the time for most of our experiment docs. Templates, I'm really into basically make a really good template and then clone it all over. So just understanding, like I like to come up with like a process and then iterate on it. Every time I make a mistake, kind of chart that down, add that into the template next time, and then clone that doc again for the next experiment. Lots of spreadsheets, also Google Sheets, really into all the Google collaborative things, presentations are great for just showing a lot of screenshots and a couple key bullet points. Yeah, spreadsheets. Google Analytics, enterprise builds. I really have found enterprise builds super useful as a product manager. I can I can put myself in different experimental buckets. We've created a tool so that the PMs can do that, test out all the cohorts and edge cases. That's been super useful. I always make spreadsheets for all the edge cases so I can check all those. And be able to kind of see exactly when metrics are firing. So I want to make sure I'm actually measuring the thing I think I am. So being able to tap a button and see like, oh, this IRA is firing. Great, okay, that's what I expected. That's really helpful. And hopefully it's helpful for the designers too, because they want to make sure that they know what I'm measuring for success and that they're designing with that in mind.
Nice. Lauren, do you have anything to?
Yeah, so in terms of tools, I think I would say I keep my everyday toolbox pretty minimal. I work, Sketch. It's lightweight, it's awesome, it has everything I need. It doesn't take 3 hours to load, like some of our, we also, I work remote for my team, so I use Sketch or Slack every single day. It's really helpful. Just to stay, being 3,000 miles away, I still feel very much in the know. So when I'm here, like this week, it's like, oh, hey, I can hug you in real life. This is awesome. And then Envision. We collaborating with engineers, like Taron mentioned, they're able to use the inspector. They're able to see iterations on every aspect of the project. So one of the things that I do is I reach out and sending it out to whoever is on the project, they're able to keep track. And if I find, so they're working on the back end before, they're able to see and keep in mind like what changes might be occurring. And then sometimes principal.
When you're feeling adventurous.
Yeah.
Related to practices and tools, are you guys worried about automation taking your job? Go.
No.
Why not?
There's always gonna need to be the human element. Like Taron mentioned, automation is, I don't think we need to fear it. There's a lot of help within it. But yeah, I just don't buy into seeing it as this scary thing. I think as much as that's evolving, we're evolving too, and it just allows us to do more exciting things in our field.
Yeah, agreed. I think if what we do today remained unchanged for the next 100 years, I'm sure robots would figure out how to do our job. But technology is going to change, people are going to change, and I think we will adopt to that and we'll get new responsibilities and figure it out. So not super worried about losing my job yet.
We'll see.
I feel like automation could help with a lot of these small local optimizations that we try to do. Here at Yelp, we kind of balance both quick, small experiments where we're trying to have fast learnings and some quick wins to help users out, that aren't too costly. But then we also try to do these massive page redesigns, like we recently redid the homepage Taron worked on. And now, we're working on big chunks of the business page, our most popularly viewed page. And some of the ideas and things we're trying are pretty wild and different. And so I'm less concerned, I guess, about automation in those regards, just because these are very big changes with a lot of different moving parts. But yeah, maybe some of these small localized things, like should the button be green or blue? Maybe automation could do that for me.
No, I'm definitely not worried about that. Because, I mean, if AI or automation can tell a joke that actually makes me laugh, then we're in Judgment Day, and it's like Terminator 2. It's bad. What I am concerned about is, the fact at the end of the day, we all, to your point, need to get paid and get health insurance, right? And so there are people that make decisions, business case decisions, that influence kind of where we're at in ad tech, around templatization, around design templatization, around advertising templatization, around automation, and it may be responsive, et cetera, but it's kind of taking all of the creativity and kind of sucking all of that human element out of at least advertising, which is really kind of my background, where I come from. And I am concerned about that because, at the end of the day, if it's 0.001% above, right, their return on ad spend or ROI, then there's a justifiable case for that. And so it's a very, very difficult conversation to have. Even though Harvard and a lot of other really smart places have done studies on creativity and how that impacts like your KPIs and like your business objectives, and like it actually increases 2, 3, 4-fold. Those conversations in ad tech I think are really hard, and I think that we should have more robust conversations around the human element versus the ability to templatize.
Do you feel like the roboticness or the repetitiveness of advertising really makes the people that put more creative energy into it rise above or really stand out?
I mean, definitely, but at the
and also, is that cost effective?
Well, and I honestly think it does, because if you look at like the difference between like what you're like actually getting at that kind of 3, 4, 5, even 10x return on actual creativity, it does. However, it's really, really fucking easy to let a platform make your ads for you, right? And so it's kind of this like opportunity cost. I went to business school. Opportunity cost like analysis that you have to, like, that a lot of these CEOs or CMOs are making around advertising and around creativity, that I think is, especially in Silicon Valley, really, really sad. And I'd really like to revisit that conversation around ad tech and automation around creativity.
Nice. Good discussion. Good discussion.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks.
What new problems excite you guys about technology, about the world, about anything? I want you to like go broad, and also, where do you get inspiration, and what trends do you see forming? Just talk for a bit. Inspire us, please.
In terms of problems, I feel like typically our problems don't change. They retain the same. The way we solve them changes. And that's to your second point, and those are the trends, right? New technology arises. Every year there are a few buzzwords around Silicon Valley. This year it seems to be AR and AI and VR. So we're figuring out how to solve archaic problems through these new technologies. The example that always comes in mind is Instagram. It's a 100-year-old problem, right? People have been taking photos for a century. They used to print it and frame it and put it on their fireplace so their friends could come and see it, or they used to send postcards. And that was a slow and grueling process. And then Polaroid came out, and that was sort of instant, but you could only give it to one person. And then internet happened, apps happened, where now you could, it's so instant that it's actually disposable, where it just lasts 24 hours and you move on with your life. I don't think Instagram or Snapchat are the final solution to the moment sharing or photo sharing problem. That'll be there for a while. But with the current technology that we have, I think those are some of the best solutions to that problem. Eventually, those will also be outdated, just like MySpace. And Lauren had a pretty active MySpace account. You want to talk about MySpace?
Don't want to talk about it. Don't want to revisit that part of my past. It was fun times, okay? It was interesting. It was a huge shift in the internet. I went from being a kid who had never experienced the internet to a full-blown teenager that was like, whoa, I have friends in all these major cities. This is awesome. And also, I don't even know it, but I'm practicing like how to code. Never forget bulletins. Bring them back. Just kidding. Don't. So I think I agree with all of your sentiments there. Regarding inspiration, personally, as a rule, I think there are amazing like pattern websites out there, but I find that when I go to them, subconsciously I start to replicate them. So
you mean design patterns specifically?
Yeah. So patterns.com, UI, Dribble, Material Up. Very cool. There's a lot of things that people are doing that are innovative and new and very inspiring. But for me, I like to, look outside my field. So whether that's a photograph or a print element, it could be a TV ad, like just, and there's storytelling in it. It forces me to think about what I'm designing from a different perspective, and then from that, I feel like I get to relish in more of that creative process versus borrowing it from another.
For things that I'm excited about, yeah, augmented reality is kind of hot right now. And
Worth pointing out, Yelp had augmented reality in 2008.
Was about to point that out. We actually have a feature since 2008 where it's called Monocle. You can point your phone in the direction of businesses and see their listings in augmented reality, which is pretty cool, but no one knows about it because it's really hidden. But now that augmented reality is being talked about, the press is interested in it again. But I'm definitely interested in doing more stuff there beyond Monocle, our 2008 feature, but thinking more about the relevant problems users are having right now on our most popular pages, usually restaurants, food, and nightlife. You know, what are they trying to do? A lot of people, if they're at the business and they're looking at the page, they're trying to figure out what they should get or what this business is known for, what's popular here. And so how could we use that maybe when you're there, if we know you're at the business, and you're trying to know what dishes are popular, what do they look like, what are people talking about them, how are ways that we can use that technology there. I'm definitely interested in exploring some stuff around that, and then also, you know, in researching mode, what are your big problems? Kind of like what Taron said, it's the same problems, but now we have another tool, and we're exploring some things with that. Another thing that we've been getting more into, I work with the photos team here, and identification or classifying types of photos is really interesting. Trying to help people find the types of information that they need to make a decision, whether that's you're specifically interested in the salads, or you just want to know if what the interior looks like, if they have good group seating. How can we showcase the most appropriate photos to you by smartly classifying them with machine learning or through text too, what people are talking about, what's good. So I'm really excited about things like that. And regarding inspiration, I keep a folder in my phone of just like awesome apps with both Yelp competitors, but also just other companies. You know, there's lots of similar patterns where I search for something, I land on a main page, I express some interest, maybe I come back and I transact with it. And I'm constantly referring to these apps that I think do that kind of system really well. And whenever I'm running into trying to understand some different ways we could approach a problem, going back through and seeing what I really like about those. So that's one way I try to stay on top of things and get more inspiration for ways to think about things.
There's a lot of questions there. I'm going to try to make this really, really brief, which is going to be hard. So David Ogilvy said the best ideas come as jokes. So for inspiration, I mean, I think that is it for me, right? If something's funny, I think that it hits a humanity, right? Like creatively, that whether you take that like aspirational or whether you take that anywhere, there's something inherent there that makes it a good idea. So I think being a student of life and really, and that's so fucking trite, but like not like looking at certain places necessarily, but just like taking in everything that you experience, ultimately kind of creates like this output, whether you're aware of it or not. So that's kind of how I think about inspiration. What I'm excited about. I'm really excited about the fact that I don't think that business is inherently evil, but I do think that business is self-serving. And what's awesome recently, especially nowadays, is that social cause and or humanity sells and or is popular. No. Bear with me real quick.
I'm with you.
Because as a society, we're there and we are thinking about other people way more than we have, right? That means that advertising, that means innovation, that means everything that from a business standpoint is really trying to kind of tap into that. And so we're seeing a lot of really, really awesome work, really awesome advertising, awesome innovation. I mean, last year, last year, these kids at Cannes won a young lion for getting a GoPro and being told, "Hey, go and create something with this." And they threw themselves into the ocean and then swam into the south of France and ran around and basically, from like first person point of view, showed what it would look like to be a refugee, right? And that was lauded, that was praised, that went viral, right? And I think the fact that we are concerned about these sorts of things nowadays is really changing the way that we think from a business standpoint, and the way that we advertise, and the way that we build products to solve problems or to talk about problems. And I'm really, really excited that we're addressing these things, and I think we're going to continue to address them for years to come.
I was going to say, you asked what new problems we're excited about, and I said there are no such things as new problems, which is not the case. Typically, like, if we were to oversimplify it, everything is an age-old problem, but some of the new solutions that we have create their own problems. Going back to the community question, one community that comes to mind that I think there's been a lot of press around is the Twitter community. There's a ton of bullying. There's like the ISIS recruiting problem. Same with like YouTube comments, again, a lot of bullying. So these are, at least the bullying is an old problem, but now with the large communities and large tools that we've built, they've kind of exacerbated, and they're bigger problems than they were before. And I think that's something that we're unfamiliar with and don't necessarily have an easy solution for, and that's exciting and challenging and rewarding once you figure it out.
Yeah, it's like a very old human problem given a simple channel and little consequence. What do you do? Yeah. Okay, so that covers our planned panel, and I would really like to open it up to audience questions. I'll be running around with a mic if anyone has anything to ask these guys.
Hello. Thanks, by the way. Very cool to hear what you guys have to say and stuff. I'm Corey. Hi. You guys talked a lot about tools, but basically just hardware. So I'm curious about any like new sorts of like software, essentially, but when it comes to the workplace, in interacting with your coworkers and getting work done. So, you can use Sketch to, make an interface and everything, but when it comes to like collaborating or speaking with businesses or speaking to your design manager or managing people, like what sorts of new things have you found to help you out with whatever job that you're performing?
I think the obvious answer is Slack for a lot of us. At least to me, it saved me a ton of meetings, and one meeting saved is worth the membership cost for Slack. But at the same time, I think what is generally a trend today is collaboration, and how do you fix that problem? Design tools are starting to address that. So Figma, for example, collaborative web design tool, or web-based design tool where multiple designers could go on there and sketch together and create together. That's one that also comes to mind. I think Wake also allows conversations to happen in an open space as well, like a collaborative space. I don't know, do you guys have tools?
Yeah, I was going to say, Lauren mentioned Envision, but I find that really useful to communicate and ask clarifying questions or edge case questions directly on the mocks in the places where I don't understand something. Also, I think that the developers enjoy that too, so they can ask clarifying questions in very specific places, and I think like commenting on mocks has been really helpful. In terms of communication, unfortunately, my team is not on Slack. I wish we were. We use IRC, so people are chatting all the time on that, and also email, which I'm still trying to figure out. Have a lot of that. But yeah, in terms of communication, those things. And I think you mentioned something else like getting feedback. We use things like usertesting.com to get videos and share them with others so that they can see how people are actually using the product. And then if I do conduct interviews, I'll try to record them and share those as well. So those are some ways that, some of the tools that I've used. Do you have anything?
No, I got nothing.
Also, just, so Google Analytics is awesome because we get data based on what we're building. But there's these tools where you mentioned Usability Hub, usertesting.com, Optimal Workshop. These are all places where you can actually either put your work up in front of people and get feedback from users, and there's that, again, like that human element of getting a response to what you're working on versus just looking at numbers. I think, sorry. I think we're at an exciting point in design because people are really investing in that aspect, like more so, definitely more so than when I started in design, where people are bringing focus groups into their office and getting feedback from not just like people in general, but the different types of users they have. So what's the difference between like a power user and someone who just stumbles upon Yelp from Google? There's a lot of information you can get from one conversation, or even something as simple as with Usability Hub, being able to post almost like an A/B version of your design and kind of pose that question of like, how is this compelling, even on the most basic level?
Nice. Next question.
Hi. So one big problem that my company is dealing with is how we grow our product internationally. And Lindsay, you made a comment about this earlier. So my question is, how do you deal with developing your product in a new country where there might be cultural differences or other things at play that are sort of hindering your product from growing the way that it has here? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about that before. We actually used to have a really big push internationally and recently scaled it back a little bit. We still maintain and support all of our international markets, but it's hard. And we're all about doing local really, really well. So we had to get local people and put people on the ground, and actually, we had to have a big team of translators because we didn't want to misspell something because we're supposed to be the local experts, So translations in terms of product and design always cause a lot more things to think about. How do the words wrap around in German? And is this button going to be really weird? People don't say it this way. Things like dollar signs versus euros versus pounds. Everything gets a lot more complicated. And then in terms of, cultural differences, so something that was interesting is like when we first expanded to Japan, photos, really, really big in Japan. So we were just getting a ton of photos compared to reviews. Like the ratio is very different. And so that was, so people use the product differently, and in probably the local apps there are different. There's probably more competitors that you don't know about yet, and they're doing something really well. So it definitely, from a product perspective, made us think about a lot more things.
Just to add on to that, I think we're all pretty critical of our work. And one area where I think we came short was we had a very Western or US-centric point of view to our international markets, and that proved to be ineffective. If I were to do things differently, I would probably have boots on the ground, researchers, market research, try to understand what are the deep cultural differences. How is our product solving a problem in a remote village in Germany, it's not. Like, is there even a point in trying to do that? Or maybe it is, and it's solving it for tourists. Maybe that's how we align our international presence. I think we sort of ignored that, and we just thought, well, people in the US have this problem, that means people in Europe have this problem, and then Japan and Asia have this problem, and that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I think the other thing there is it's not just about the UI you're putting out there. Coming off of what you're saying, it's also like the voice and gesture of your product and how that can affect. I lived in Germany. We have a product team out there as well, and it was very interesting. Just from the perspective coming from a Western point of view. I mean, it's still Germany is Europe. But there's still like big differences, even in the approach of talking to business owners. In Brooklyn, I can talk to the guy at the bagel shop, no problem. I'm like, I love this cream cheese. Can I ask you about this in relation to the Yelp app? If I did that in Germany, they'd be like, who are you? Please stop. You are scaring us. You are smiling too much. You are very scary. And so, like having to think about how I approached that required like a shift in myself. And I think at a very top level, it's like, we're not designing for us. We're designing for someone else.
I mean, I agree with everybody up here. I mean, I think there's a tad bit of hubris in thinking that your product solves humanity's need. And so, I mean, in my experience, when I've scaled globally, it's kind of about what everyone's talking about is looking on a very local level, and does this solve a local need, and or does it solve a cultural need, right? Because it's very easy for us to say like, well, shit, we want to give our opinion on everything here in America. Do they want to do that in Germany? And asking those kinds of questions, right? And so it's kind of about like picking and choosing and winning those battles, right? And like knowing where like your product is going to be useful, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, you have to provide utility, whether it's the product itself or even your advertising, right? It's about utility. So don't be globalistic.
Good advice.
Cheers,
Next
man.
question.
Hi, thank you all for sharing, by the way. Love this company, love the product that you produce. But in terms of like the content that you have, it's all pretty much user-generated content. So can you talk a little bit about the approach or the approaches that you take or the processes that you have in curating that content, whether it's visual content or if it's just the reviews that you receive from various users, whether it's in Spanish or in English. I mean, what is that? And when you are reviewing it, like, what are you looking for in the curation process? Are you looking for things that are completely outside of what the product is about, and then you're kind of like, you're editing through that, or I guess I'll stop there.
So the question was, what do we do, or how do we encourage content creation, or what do we do with the content that we receive, and how do we ensure it's good, more or less?
More like your curation process, right? Like, you have thousands of people that are writing reviews and submitting photos, right, or videos to a particular product. Like, what's your approach? What is your process into editing that particular review on that product?
Gotcha. Buzzword, machine learning. We recently developed this process or algorithm, whatever you want to call it, where we have trained the machines to figure out what's a good photo and what's not a good photo. So if a business has 2,000 photos, how do we know which one that first photo should be, or how do we know which one the first 5 to 10 should be? And I guess without giving away a lot of secrets, there's a number of variables that go into that. We look at how useful each one of those photos are, how aesthetically pleasing each one of those photos are. We allow people to vote if they're helpful or flag if they're not helpful. And those are all taken into account to create that sort. And then further, if a user just wants to see interior photos or food photos, we're able to identify that and serve that need as well. And this is something that you don't necessarily think about when you first launch a product like Yelp. It would be a dream to get 2,000 people to submit a photo for a particular business. But once you have mass amounts of information like that, you start trying to think how you could serve the best content at the best time possible.
Yeah, kind of going off of that a little bit too. Some of the ways that we try to figure out, like, how do we order photos aren't just from like raw signals like likes, but also from talking to users, understanding what they're looking for, that it's not super helpful to see 3 of the same dish photos in a row, but diversity might be interesting. So things like that, and then we'll add that into there. So pick the best food, then pick the best inside, things like that. Also, in terms of reviews, trying to bring out, maybe if you're trying to understand your intent, so if you are just browsing, and maybe we can get that based on the types of queries you give or the types of actions you take, and we're pretty sure you're in browsing mode. How do we just show you, okay, generally, these are the things people are usually interested in browsing mode, so we're gonna try to elevate that type of information, versus if you show like very high intent in terms of I'm trying to make a reservation by certain actions you're taking, how do we change the content to try to give you information around that and help you follow through? There's also things we wanna do more around context. So again, trying to understand your intent based on day of the week, time of day, how can we create the right content for you? And so we have these machine learning teams who are focused on a bunch of projects around that.
Nice. In the interest of time, I'm going to say this will be the last question. So anybody else got one?
Actually, I have 2 questions. Thank you for... I'm an international. I came from China. I know that once the first time I came to US, my friend already told me, download the Yelp. Yeah, so I think it's very famous internationally. So my question is, because I'm noticing the Yelp have 2 customer side. One is the restaurant and one is the, for me, like I'm user. So for example, if I am a restaurant owner, how can I noticing my restaurant is a lot of user using it? Like it's a 2 different mindset. Sorry, I'm nervous. So second question is like, as a designer, how do you grow yourself? Is it?
I can answer the first one. Yeah, so that's a really great question. Not a lot of people actually talk about the biz owner side of things. The way our product team is actually set up is we have 2 whole product teams that like have separate consumers, or I guess users. So we have the consumer team, which is the team I work on, and this is the Yelp product that you probably use to find a business. Then we have a whole another set of product managers and designers that work on an app for business owners and also a website for business owners. So we have a bunch of objectives around helping business owners take care and manage their listing. It's that's the moneymaker side. That's where business owners can buy advertising and other products that go to our revenue. So all those things are super important, but less known to the majority of people. But we definitely have a full side of the product and design org that's just focused on those tools.
Yeah, the Yelp for Business Owners app is awesome because it really empowers the business owners to make sure their content is up to date. They're able to interact with their customers, whether that's through messaging the business, responding to reviews. It creates a human exchange. To answer your question about how do you grow as a designer, so this is like a personal practice for me. I've been designing for 9 years. And like a grandma, I keep everything on a hard drive by like each year. For some reason, I haven't moved it to the cloud. But I like to look back on the year before and see how I've actually changed in like what I'm outputting for the really like down in the dump days. I look at year one and I'm like, oh man, that's a lot of texture. That's a lot of gradients. But it's really cool because we don't. I think so. I mentor as well, and I always tell my students that we're always visiting iterations, and even in 3 days' time, I'll say, hey, I want you to look at the last version that you submitted, and they'll go, there's always this sense of like, oh wow, yeah, I do see the improvement. I don't think we talk enough about reflection, and that's a great question. Not just how you grow, but and documenting that growth as well.
Just to add on to that, I'm sure you have a lot of passion for design, and you're here trying to learn more about it. Keep it up. One thing that I did in the past, and I still do today, is do passion projects, things that I have a lot of passion for, but it's not Yelp related. And just for fun, I would do it. And I think those are the best ways to kind of let your creativity roam free. You don't have a PM to answer to. You don't have business goals. You don't have like, style guides, et cetera, to worry about. You could actually push the boundaries as much as you want and see where you could take your skill set. And I think you learn a ton from doing that.
I can speak to how we engage with both, like in external communications, right? Both visually and verbally. Right now, like we have a very, I don't want to say disparate, but like there are very kind of singular ideas about how we speak to both of them. In my experience, the business owner is still a consumer, like when they clock out at 5 o'clock, right? Or whenever they clock out. And so I'm a firm believer, and I've seen success in the fact that like the way that you design or the way that you engage or communicate or message to business owners should feel like it's coming from the same brand, the same identity as the types of communications and messaging and design and visual language that you do on the consumer side. I mean, granted, it's going to be, a little bit less cheeky, maybe like slightly less irreverent, but it should feel like it's coming from the same place. Because they don't want to be kind of talked down to and or like, deprecated in their communication just because of their business owner, right? They want to engage with you on the business side because they love who you are and what you do on the consumer side. So they should feel a part of the same world, I guess it would be like the way that I would communicate that.
Another thing to add is there are so many resources. So when I first started in design, the thing I got most frustrated with was, I want to design. I don't know where to start. I had a blank artboard in Illustrator or a new page in Photoshop. I think there's a lot of exciting websites that are available. dailyui.co is one of them. There's not a lot of information, but you're prompted with an idea. You have the space to expand upon it, you're putting time. All things take time. Cheesy, but it's true. And the more you're practicing, we've met a lot of designers from Daily UI, so companies are looking at those hashtags. And join those online communities where those discussions are happening, those online critiques are happening. Post to Dribble, post to your blog, write a Medium post. You don't have to be the best writer, but you just have to start somewhere. And then over time, you get better. It becomes easier, and yeah.
Awesome. So I think that wraps up the panel portion of the night, but we still got 45 more minutes to hang out and just enjoy ourselves. Go ahead and give the panelists a huge round of applause.